All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the Code Nation Basics webinar. So basically, in this webinar, we're going to go over everything that we went over in the in-person session. If you want to go to this bit.ly here, you can get access to materials which are relevant to this session, but I'm also going to link a lot of things in the description, so please feel free to access things like the slideshow there as well. My name is Maxwell, and I'm a program manager in New York City, and I'm going to be taking you through this webinar, so let's begin. So here's our agenda. We're going to start off talking about our program model, and this is going to include our mission and our vision and why we do what we do. We're then going to talk about volunteering with Code Nation and what the expectations are for that. Finally, we're going to talk more about our learning environments that we use to teach students how to code. Then we're going to talk about curriculum and even give a rationale for why certain aspects of our curriculum are included. We're going to talk about lesson planning expectations, how you can support Code Nation even outside of just being a volunteer, and then next steps. And that's going to include a form, which is going to have, it's going to be a feedback form, but also a check for understanding form, which you're expected to submit to certify that you have watched this webinar. Okay, here are our objectives for today. Just take a moment to read through these. We hope that by the end of this session, you can confidently do all of these things. So take a moment to read. Okay. And the first thing we're going to talk about is our program model. And again, by that, I mean our mission and our vision. Here again are some more objectives for this session. Take a moment to read through these as well. It's that first objective, actually. So we're going to describe Code Nation program and model across tiers. Okay, so Code Nation largely exists to address the discrepancy between what we know to be true about how important and vibrant the tech industry is, and also the unfortunate reality that many students leave high school without access or even knowledge about careers in the tech industry, despite how important it is. So we see that the median annual wage for tech jobs is significantly higher than the median annual wage for all other jobs. However, a lot of students, only 35% of public high schools offer computer science courses. And the unfortunate reality is that a lot of these schools are not schools which serve students of color. And what makes this even more problematic is that 4 out of 5 students who pursue STEM careers decide to do so before they leave high school. So these are the students who would have access to these high school computer science courses, but the students that don't leave high school without knowledge that this is something that they can have access to, so they're left out of this entire career field. So where Code Nation comes in is that we hope to give students in these under-resourced schools the technical skills and the professional skills to feel that they can too be part of the tech industry. So we get technical skills in terms of teaching them about web development, but we also get them professional skills in a number of different ways, especially in our fellowship program, where the students have opportunities to learn skills that are going to be helpful, not just if they work in the tech industry, but if they work in just professional skills that are helpful in general. We give workplace experience by, especially when students have opportunity to visit tech companies, and in the fellowship year, they have an opportunity to take their class in an actual tech company. We give them connections in the industry, which would include all of you, all volunteers, who act not only as their teachers, but also mentors who can tell them about what the tech industry looks like. And then finally, again, we hope that they leave our courses feeling like if they want to pursue a career in technology, that they have the skills necessary to do so. And now they have the knowledge that this is an option that they can definitely take advantage of. So our approach is really it's layered. It's to engage volunteers. So our courses are taught by experienced software engineers on a volunteer basis. So making sure that students have access to people who are knowledgeable about these kinds of careers and actually work within it. We teach in schools, so our programs are tuition free across all our different classes. And we go to schools where 75% or more of the student population qualifies for free or reduced price lunch. Um, we partner with different companies. So during our fellowship year, the students go and actually take classes in tech companies. And that's a way for students to get exposure to this. And then we link them to careers. So we immerse students in tech by hosting our fellowship classes, as I said, but then also they have interaction with people who work in the actual tech industry. And then our approach also to kind of make these students aware of these opportunities and to make them feel like it's something that they can be a part of is to build community, obviously in the classroom, but also through hackathons, through summer programs, field trips, alumni events. And all of these things really allow students to build a professional network that hopefully they can use and leverage later on in life when they do, if they do want to pursue a career in tech. So we have several different courses that we do, or different courses and services that we provide students. The first class that we offer is Intro to Web Development, and that is an introductory course to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Ideally, our students in this course are sophomores or juniors in high school, but sometimes we do have first year and seniors who take this class as well. After they finish that course, they can take our second course, which is called the Code Nation Fellowship. And this is a project-based coding professional development class that's hosted at an actual tech company or a partner company. And typically our students in these classes are juniors and seniors in high school. And then finally, when we finish both of our classes, students are included in our alumni program, in which we continue even after they finish their classes to provide them with resources and support and networking opportunities to help them pursue a career in technology. For students who finish both of our classes but are still not graduated from high school because maybe they started the class when they were a first year student, we also have a class called Studio, in which they learn even more advanced coding skills. So this was our reach for last school year. You see that in New York, we had 32 partner schools. So we were at 32 different schools throughout the city, which led us to have 56 programs overall, and we served 1,030 students. And in the Bay Area, we had 14 partner schools, 20 programs overall, and we served 344 students. So we reach a large amount of students in order to get them this coding education and to expand access to careers in technology. And this year, we're going to continue to expand because we're also adding schools and programs in Chicago, which we're really excited about. So if you look at the demographics of Code Nation classes, you'll see that there's a pretty big discrepancy between the demographics of the actual competing workforce. In our classes, 45% of students are female identifying and 79% are Black or Latinx. And most of our students, because of the schools that we work in, come from households where the average income is $43,000 or less. Comparing that to the competing workforce, which is much less female identifying, much less Black and Latinx, and the average salary for the average tech worker is significantly higher than the average salary that a lot of our students, the households that a lot of our students live in. So our goal really in Code Nation is to expand access to careers in technology through what we do in the hopes that we can diversify the tech industry so that the tech industry looks more similar to what our classes looks like, and so that there's a variety of different perspectives, and so that a variety of different people have access to actually accessing these important and vibrant careers in technology. So what this means is that if we are successful, many more young people from underrepresented groups will be exposed to quality coding instruction and opportunities in the technology workforce. This will also mean that we'll play an integral role in fostering a diverse workforce or software developers who will create technology that benefits everyone. That young people with a passion for this field will receive the training, experience, and connections essential for success, creating pathways to personal fulfillment and economic empowerment. Yeah, that's really what our goals are, really through this program, to diversify the tech industry and to give students who might not have had access before access to career technology and knowledge that they can have a career in tech if they want to. That's what we're hoping to do here at Code Nation. So now we're going to talk a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion. These are conversations that are going to be continued throughout the year and different training sessions, but this is just a way to start that conversation. And here's the objective for this part of the session. We're going to reflect on our identity and how it affects how we all show up in the classroom. So if you think about your identity, and by that we mean the values, beliefs, and other dimensions of yourself that affect how you interact with others, that's actually a really important component of what it is to be a teacher. Because not only does your identity affect how others view you, but your identity might affect how you view other people. So being very conscious of what our identity is an important component of being a culturally responsive and a culturally responsive teacher and an effective teacher. And I think that this also kind of relates to this idea of authenticity, right? That we want you to bring your identity with you into the classroom because we want students to get a sense of who you are. People relate to people who they understand, and they learn better from people who they understand. So really being very aware of your identity and what that means in the classroom space is going to be pretty important for how you teach this year. So we have a little bit of an activity here. As you see on the right, there's a diversity wheel. And I want you to take some time to look at this diversity wheel. And then I want you to write down 5 things that describe who you are. So I want you to just think of the top 5 things, the first 5 things that come to mind about who you are as a person or what you see as your identity. And then I want you to locate those characteristics on the diversity wheel, which you can see bigger here. And I want you to write those down. And then when you're done writing those down, you can actually pause the video now if you want to. I want you to think about these questions and maybe answer these questions to yourself. So just take a moment to pause the video now and write down 5 aspects of your identity that are very important to you. And then when you're done, you can unpause the video and look at the questions and just answer them for yourself. So you can start that now. Okay, I'm assuming you've unpaused at this point. So you can now reflect thinking about these questions. How did you identify yourself? So what were the 5 aspects of yourself that you picked out? What was difficult or what was easy about thinking about these things? How does volunteering with Code Nation fit into your identity? Like what aspect of Code Nation kind of fits in with your identity? And what do you hope to gain from this experience? By that we mean, what do you hope to gain from the volunteering experience? I think that's a very important question to ask yourself. So just take a moment to reflect on these different questions based on that activity. And again, remember that we're going to be having different trainings about diversity and inclusion throughout the year, where we'll definitely continue these conversations in a much more in-depth way. Okay. So hopefully you did take time to pause the video and go through that. But the next part of this session, we're going to talk about volunteering with Code Nation and what are the expectations and responsibilities that come along with that. So here's where we are in this session. Identify the expectations and responsibilities of being a Code Nation classroom volunteer. So as you know, because many of you at this point have probably started teaching, or if you haven't, it's important to know the structure. Each class has 4 volunteer teachers. These are the individuals who actually come from the tech industry. And there's one teacher liaison who actually works at that school, or in the case of fellowship, is a company representative. And then one program manager. This is someone who often has former experience in the classroom, who is there to help out with things such as classroom culture and classroom management in the classroom. So the responsibilities of the volunteers. So each volunteer on a weekly cycle will lead teach, and their job is to go into the curriculum, which I have linked in the description, and look at the lesson plan, internalize the lesson plan, change anything that they feel is necessary to change based on the students, and then share this with their team, and then of course deliver that content in the classroom, right? That's the lead teacher has all of those responsibilities for the week that they're lead teaching. But then, of course, people who are not lead teaching, the supporting teachers, also have responsibilities. They still have to review the lesson plan because it's really not possible to help students if you don't understand the material yourself and you're not prepared, and provide students with support doing independent work time, circulating around the room, looking at what students are doing, picking up on any misconceptions that they might have and addressing them. That is the role of the supporting teacher. And then all teachers, regardless of if they're leading or not that week, will be in charge of grading student work at some point and providing feedback and assignments, especially the projects. All teachers will have a hand in grading those. So attendance expectations. So whether you're the lead teacher or the support teacher, our hope is that volunteers are in every class. That's not only important in terms of teaching and supporting, but also really important in terms of building relationships with students, which is going to be very vital for, their learning experience or their desire to be in class. We recognize that this is a huge commitment. What you all do is really a huge commitment, and we're very appreciative of it. So we recognize that you have other jobs and that you have other obligations and responsibilities, and that you might be out. So really what our attendance expectation is that you attend class at least 80% of the time, and that you have communication with your program manager about when you might be missing class. And if your attendance dips below 80%, then it'll just be a conversation to reevaluate your commitment and talk about ways in which we can help you attend class more, because you are such a valuable resource. This would not happen without your help. And we want you to be in class, so we'll look at ways that we can really help uh, with attendance as well. So here's our volunteer code of conduct. I'm just gonna, you can pause the video and read it here. Okay. So basically, this idea that we come in the classroom with the belief that every young person, regardless of where they're from or their background, can learn how to code. We value diversity and we value these differences that our students bring to the classroom, and we use this as a platform for teaching them. And that we just have respect for the students and the other volunteers and teachers around us, for the schools that let us into their space, and that we're being very respectful of everybody and who they are. Our goal is to teach and to make a comfortable learning environment for everybody. Okay, so now the next part of the session is to talk about curriculum structures. So here, this objective of this session is to gain an understanding of the curriculum structure, scope, sequence, and lesson components. So basically, the Code Nation curriculum is created by a curriculum council, which is made up of volunteers with strong technical expertise, and Code Nation staff. These are people who have a strong pedagogical background. They might not have taught computer science, but they've taught before, and they have that background to help them form the curriculum. And our curriculum is hosting on GitHub. It's open source because our goal is to expose as many students to coding as possible. And one of the things that you might notice on the slides when you're going through the lesson and internalizing is that you might see this feedback form. And basically, the feedback form is something that we at Codenation look through at the end of each unit, at the end of when most classes have finished a particular unit, to think about what things we can change. So if you're ever going through a lesson and you think, this could be better explained in a certain way, or that this isn't really relevant to how things are taught now or how people are doing things in tech industry now, please put that feedback in the feedback form, which is it's linked to in every single lesson in both fellowship and intro. Because we do look at that and we do take your feedback seriously. We value your expertise, and we want to make our curriculum as relevant for our students as possible. As we said, our curriculum's on GitHub. We see that there's 3 different curriculums here. One for the Intro to Web Development class, which is the one in actual schools, one in the Code Nation Fellowship, and then I mentioned this before, but the Code Nation Fellowship 2, which used to be called Studio, we also have that curriculum on GitHub. And I want to take a moment to answer questions which are commonly asked about the curriculum. Um, we've thought about a lot of these questions pretty deeply in the years that since we've started, and we're really happy to answer any other questions you have. Please feel free to reach out with them. We try to again make our curriculum as relevant as possible to students, so that they can feel like they're confident with the skills they've gained to later use them, and whenever if they choose to have a career in the tech industry. So if you have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to reach out with them. But I'm just going to answer some commonly asked questions now. Why web development? So the reason why we have the students do web development is because it's practical. There are many jobs that require the skill. It's relatable. Students go on websites and different apps all the time. They're constantly using these kinds of interfaces. It allows students to create an exciting product quickly, and it introduces them to a lot of programming concepts and the logic that's involved in a lot of those. Gives students understanding of the world around them, allows them to be creators. Students love the opportunity to be creative, and that's what building your own webpage does. And it supports them going in from zero to industry ready. And what we mean by that is a lot of our students come into our class having, as I mentioned earlier, never taking a computer science course before, having no idea what CS means, having no idea what web development means. And because it is so engaging and interactive, the process of creating your own website and learning these different programming languages, it takes them from a point of going from knowing absolutely maybe nothing or knowing very little to being able to leave there, especially if they're with us for a couple of years, to have skills that they can hone and tweak throughout the years to actually be someone who works in the tech industry. Why HTML, CSS? Jobs aren't asking for the skills anymore. And really, why we teach HTML and CSS is because they are the backbone of many websites. Even if students aren't actively doing this when they get a job in the tech industry, it's still super important for them to understand HTML and CSS. And we hope that by starting with these easier, engaging languages, our students will get hooked on coding and eager to learn more, right? You have to start somewhere. We hope that by learning these languages, which are a bit simpler than other programming languages, they're like, this is really interesting. I want to learn harder things. And that also these languages, although they are easier to understand than other languages, uh, they still have students go through the process of logical thinking that they're going to need later on for more difficult languages, like say JavaScript. So one of the things that we also teach in the Intro to Web Development curriculum is jQuery. It starts Unit 6. And some volunteers have asked why we teach jQuery because it is something that maybe is not as used as it was when Code Nation was first founded. So the reason why we continue to use jQuery is because it's fun and engaging. Students are able to dive into JavaScript concepts and immediately see their results. It also helps students see the interactivity of what they're building immediately. And of course, learning jQuery is going to build excitement for them to learn other JavaScript concepts, which we will go over in the intro class, and that will later develop in the fellowship and fellowship 2 classes as well. Okay, please feel free to send any other questions that you might have about the curriculum as you're going through it by filling out that feedback form. So now we're going to talk about curriculum structure. So the Code Nation curriculum is structured into units that are divided into daily lessons and activities. So for instance, the first or the second unit in Foundations is HTML. And what you see, if you look at the screen, it says Scope and Sequences. These are the different objectives, these bullet points. These are the different objectives that there would be in the HTML unit. So total, there's 5 different lessons. And these lessons in the intro curriculum, the intro to web development curriculum, usually culminate in a project in which you take all the skills that they learned and they independently create this project that they submit. Fellowship units are structured around a multi-day project. So, for instance, I know the first project in fellowship this year has students create a Pig Latin translator. And that's a project that's done over 2 lessons that they're going to be creating based on skills that they've already learned and skills that they're learning in that class as well. So if you look at the GitHub website, it's pretty easy to navigate. If you open up a unit, so for instance, this unit is CSS, what you'll see on the left is the lesson number here. And then what you see on the right is how long that lesson is supposed to take. Most of our intro lessons are structured for about 45 minutes. And then there's additional resources too all the way here at the far right. If you, for instance, have a class that's a bit longer and you need something to add to that class as like an extension activity, we'll usually have linked different resources that you can add to class in order to add that extension opportunity. So as I already mentioned the feedback form, please, if you're ever going through lessons and you just want to give feedback on the lesson content, please fill in that feedback form. It's also on GitHub, but it's also in the lesson plans themselves on the slideshow. And we always make updates to our curriculum every year. And we use those comments largely to be able to do that. So your feedback is appreciated. Okay, so here are the lesson components. Every single lesson, whether in intro to web development or fellowship, is going to more or less consist of these components. Every lesson has a do now or entry activity. You have the option of doing that on paper or the option of doing that on the computer itself. That's up to you and the classroom culture that you and your program manager and the other volunteers have and the teacher liaison have created. Direct teach is when you introduce students to new material. That's when they're taking notes, but also that should be interactive as well. You're still asking questions, getting them engaged, but you're teaching them some new skill. After that comes the guided practice. That's when you have the Popcode open and you're actively going through how to do the skill. You're asking students lots of questions to see if they understood what you have taught. Independent practice, of course, that's when students do the work on their own, of course, with assistance if they need it. And then Every lesson will end with an exit ticket. That's where students, again, it's like a little, if you want to think about like a mini quiz where students will show that they've understood the concept for the day. And then there's homework. And that's, again, we provide homework with every lesson, but that's up to you and the volunteers and the teacher liaison about how you're using homework, how often you're giving it. But there is a homework assignment for every single lesson. And then, of course, at the end of every unit, there's a project. So intro projects are all structured to build on exactly what was learned in the unit. And projects all have rubrics, which are very concrete and concise about what the students have to do in order to show mastery. And absolutely share these rubrics with the students so that they're very clear on what they have to do in order to do well on the project. Um, and then the fellowship units are designed around building a project. So students do learn skills, new skills, or they review skills in the fellowship class before working on the project. But it's a bit more independent and it's cumulative of a lot more things. And students learn skills that contribute directly to the completion of that project. And here you see an example of a rock, paper, scissors project that students do work on in fellowship. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the different learning environments that we teach students to code on in order to facilitate this curriculum. So we see that in Intro to Web Development, we use three main things. We use Popcode, which we'll talk about in a second, Google Classroom, and then GitHub. But then in Fellowship, we use a more advanced coding platform. We use Gitpod, Replit, and then they have an agenda every day that tells them what they're working on, and then also GitHub issues for hosting the curriculum as well there. Please use the tools that we provide for student support. These are great tools to help students learn and help them grow as coders. It can be difficult for students to use a new platform without prior experience, so we stick to these platforms and materials and resources that we have here. So Popcode, as many of you have probably seen, is an online IDE created by one of our long-term volunteers. And it's really like a learning platform for students who are new to programming. Every time you make a mistake in Popcode, it gives you a message that tells you what you've done wrong. It tells you exactly what you need to change. So if you think about it in some way, it's kind of like training wheels to help students learn how to program, to help them be mindful of looking at error messages, and just really, it's very interactive and fun in that way. And this is used in Intro to Web Development classes. I linked this in the description. Feel free to go through this if you have not taught yet and look at what Popcode does. We also use an Intro to Web Development classes Google Classroom. Google Classroom is a great way to organize the classroom. Here's where you will post assignments, including the slides themselves, where they submit their projects, where they're going to submit their exit tickets, where they're going to submit their due nouns. It's really, really important in the classroom as a tool for students. And if you need any help with how to upload things to Google Classroom, because it is so important, in the description here, I'm going to link to helpful videos on the Code Nation YouTube channel that talk about how to upload things to Google Classroom. Please check those out. They're very clear and concise. Thank you, Emily, for making them. And they can help you make sure that everything's uploaded correctly so students have access to this material and classes ready to go. Fellowship is slightly different. So Fellowship, we no longer use Google Classroom, where students will access things like the slides will be in an agenda. And you see the agenda or a copy of the agenda on the right here. So basically what the agenda includes is the objective for today, the materials that are going to be used, which will be the slides, which will always be linked to, and then what the agenda is, the specific agenda is for that lesson, and then any announcements like we're not having class next week, or remember to bring this particular homework assignment. These agendas are shared with the students before class, and they always have access to them because they're in a bit.ly, and they're cumulative. So you just add to these consistently throughout the year before each class. And just like there are videos for the intro materials, there's also videos for the fellowship materials. So again, I will link in the description details on how you're supposed to fill out the agenda. So please check it out if you ever have any confusion. They're very helpful videos. And then, of course, in fellowship, we kind of like move the students on up from using Popcode, which is very user-friendly for beginners, and using Gitpod, which is an actual platform that that actual coders might use. It's integrated with GitHub, And this is where students will actually create their projects. And Gitpod, I also linked in the description if you want to check it out. If you're a fellowship teacher or otherwise, this is the platform students will be using to create projects in fellowship. Also, what students will be learning using in fellowship is Replit. So it's an online IDE like Popcode, and it's more similar to Popcode than Gitpod is, obviously. And this is used often for homework and practice assignments in class. It's different from Popcode in the sense that it gives students maybe a bit less guidance on like what their errors are, but it still does give them an error message, and it does give them some guidance on how to fix it. And this is mostly going to be used for classwork assignments occasionally, and homework assignments in fellowship. Again, if you want to check out Replit and how it works, please check out the videos I'm going to link in the description and our It's Code Nation channel. And then I keep talking about GitHub. Of course, GitHub is a place where we can store different projects. All student projects are stored here. It's introduced in the Intro to Web Development class. They'll be using it a lot there, but it's used very frequently in the fellowship classes. And I also linked our GitHub in the description. That's also where you're going to find all the curriculum materials. Okay, so in this part of the webinar, you're going to get a curriculum deep dive, and there's actually an activity here. If you want to pause the video and do this activity now, please feel free to do so. If you've already taught before, I'd say this is less important, but if you haven't taught before, I think this year, I think this would be a very helpful activity. Basically, you're going to open the curriculum, you're going to find your level, whether it's Intro to Web Development or Fellowship, and you're going to dive in. And you're going to click onto a lesson, identify all the components, the do now, the direct teach, the guided practice, and the exit ticket. And then you're going to look for the feedback form. And then you're just going to just explore the lesson, look around it. This is, again, all on GitHub. And you can take 20 minutes to do that. You can pause the video here if you want to do it now. Again, this would be more helpful if you have not taught yet, just to get familiar with what the lessons look like. And then if you teach fellowship and you haven't taught yet, a bonus would be to go into the fellowship curriculum, and especially if there's a project, look at the starter code for the project and the solution code, because that's going to be helpful for you to be aware of in order to teach the project well and help students and support them. So you can pause here if you want to take a moment to do this activity. Okay, 2 more things that we're going to talk about. One of them is how you can support Code Nation. I mean, you already support Code Nation by being in the classroom, but other ways you can support and stay involved with Code Nation outside of the classroom. One way that you can really support us is by sharing the opportunity with friends and coworkers. You are all great people, and I'm sure you know other great people who work in the tech industry who would be great fit for Code Nation. So please spread the word and act as kind of like a steward for Code Nation in your workplace and to other friends who work in tech to potentially get them involved as well. One thing that we often ask of our volunteers is if they can to host a class trip at their company. This is a great opportunity for students to see what an actual tech company looks like. So if you are able to, we certainly ask volunteers to host these field trips in order to give the students the experience of seeing what a tech company actually looks like. Another way to stay active and support the Code Nation community is to stay active on your Slack channel. On the volunteer Slack, there's obviously going to be a channel for you and your group, but then there's also going to be a Slack channel for other things like job opportunities, like questions about curriculum. Feel free to join those Slack channels as well. Just stay active in the Code Nation community. If you want to donate, that's definitely a possibility to donate to Code Nation, take an individual donation, or also host a fundraiser. And then to host an event at your company space. It could be an event with students, or it could be an event with Code Nation staff and other volunteers from different companies. But we always encourage our volunteers to help out in every way possible, and really use them as resources to help support Code Nation. Okay, so that's it for the webinar today. What I'm going to ask that you do is you go to this bit.ly here, this bit.ly/CN Basics, and that you take this form, and that certifies that you have gone through this webinar. So the form asks some questions about things talked about in the webinar, but also importantly, it asks for your feedback on the webinar. So please take some time to fill out this form, and by going to this bit.ly, I also have it linked in the description on this YouTube video. And then Slack your PM when you have completed, just so that they know that they can check off that you've completed the Code Nation Basic session. Thank you very much for watching this video, and please fill out that feedback form so we can know how we're doing, if this session was helpful for you. And really, I'm hoping all of you have a successful year in the classroom. And thank you so much for giving your time to Code Nation and for volunteering. It means a lot for our students and a lot for us. Thank you.